we gotta talk. Over the weekend, we got the jobs report numbers, and they were not good. We added 73,000 jobs to the economy, and it was far below what we expected. And it was well below what the president expected as well. Even worse, there were some numbers that were revised down by 260,000 jobs. And this was the thing that set the president off. So far off that he fired the commissioner over the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a red flag that can absolutely set things off, not only for the next recession, it could ensure that we don't even see the next recession coming. But what exactly does that mean? Why is it so dangerous? And why am I so deeply concerned? Let's go ahead and break it down. This is going to be more of a stream of conscious. I got some notes. I don't know if I'm going to look at them. All right. But here's the thing. Let's get the politics out of the way first, because I know somebody is going to bring it up. This is not political, whether you feel like it's political or not. And it is very simple. Who is the beneficiary of such a thing? If you feel like the numbers were revised down to hurt the president, the beneficiaries, a lot of people say it's the Democrats, but it can't be the previous president because he was so unpopular and so old that he didn't even get to finish the race. And that doesn't help somebody who already left. And there is no election this year. You don't really, cook the books or bring down numbers to help nobody a year and some change before an election that's not here. So there's that. That just doesn't make sense, right? And again, it's a midterm. Now, if it's a presidential election, all right, I got you. That you might be on to something, but there isn't one this year. And even for midterms, it's still kind of sketchy. So a Democratic Party also that doesn't control the House, doesn't control the Senate, doesn't even control the Supreme Court. It just does not make sense. There is no logic there. And also the person who was in charge, who is now fired, was there for 20 years across multiple presidential administrations. It was an unelected position. So they're usually bureaucrats. I know that's a dirty term, but they're there for a reason, and they're there because they're supposed to be non-political, so they don't end up in situations like this. So it doesn't make sense. So there's that. So now we got the politics out of the way. Let's talk about the recession piece and why we're not going to see it coming. So put yourself in the next person's shoes who takes this job. It is now perhaps the hardest job in the world, because now, and this is a monthly report, every single time that you say something, the world is looking at it, and there is no right answer. Here are your choices, multiple choice options, okay? You lie and make the president happy and keep your job, feed your family, mind your business. You tell the truth and the numbers are good and the president is happy, but now everybody's doubting you because you were only there because the president thinks you're going to tell him what he wants to hear. But now I don't know if it's true. You don't know if it's true. Nobody knows if it's true. You tell the truth and the numbers are bad. And we still don't know if it's true, but the president doesn't like it and you're fired. And the entire world is looking because this is the world's biggest economy and everybody wants to know, because if America's not doing well, then perhaps they're going to charge more tariffs, perhaps they're going to pull back on investment and everything starts to crumble. There are no right answers. You tell the truth and it's bad, you tell the truth and it's good, or you just do what the president likes. When it comes to putting out bad economic data or untrustworthy data and people stop trusting you, we've seen that it doesn't work. We saw this in Greece. It was called the Greek debt crisis. It happened right around the financial crisis. I don't know if enough people remember this, but in the late 2000s, we're talking 2008, 2009, all the way up until like 2018, the person over the Greek Bureau of Economic Labor or Statistics, they started lying about their data and understating some stuff, and they were consistently lying about data and information. Their economy started to fold because they were not truthful about what was going on. It's happening in Argentina too. The problem with it happening in America isn't the fact that we are a much larger, more interconnected economy. It is also because we just passed a bill that is going to get us $3 trillion in debt. To pay that debt, we have to issue those bonds. bruh, if they don't trust us, then they go buy them bonds. And if they're not buying those bonds, we can't pay off that debt. It's all connected. That is a major, major problem. And then it goes to an individual level. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but again, I use that data. We all use that data, and without it, it puts us in a very fractured state, because if I don't know what inflation is, if I don't know what consumer spending is, then how am I going to know what to invest in? And what really happens is I go to my grocery store and say, okay, I think this is higher than what it was a week ago, a year ago, or whatever. But you live in California, you're like, yes, inflation is super high. And I'm looking like, I don't really know. And now we're all in our own bubbles, in our own reality, not knowing what the broader picture is. And the issue is, when we're investing in Walmart, Apple, Netflix, these are global corporations who all charge not all, but if it's a subscription service, it's a flat rate for a lot of these things. How do I evaluate a business when the only information I can verify is the one grocery store I can go to, and the one that you can verify is the one that you can go to? That's chaotic. And what staff I got? Okay, I'm only one person. And the one place, or one of the few places rather, that we could go to and say, hey, I know it's not perfect. It was never, ever perfect. But it was, hey, I know this nerd has been calculating this data for 20 years, for 2 decades, and that's all they do is sit there and punch these calculators. The data is the data. I may not like it, it may not be fun, but I know it's there. That was something we could have relied on. Now, why was the data revised? Why did the data get revised in the first place? I know it's a question that people ask. I got my degree in economics. I got a master's degree as well. This is literally in the textbook. In fact, the Bureau of Labor Statistics even put it on their website back in 2012. Basically, I don't know why they do it via mail. They really need to update it. That's part of the problem too. But in either case, they send out a bunch of surveys, almost 500,000, and say, hey, what jobs you got, what openings, so on and so forth. All right? People send their stuff back. Not everybody turns their homework in time. That's essentially what happens. Okay, now what they do, and perhaps this is a mistake in the way that they do it, but this is just how they do it, okay? Every month, they say, hey, I send out the survey, and whatever we get, if it's 75% of the data, that's what we report when the report is due. You ain't turn it in, you ain't turn it in. And the next month, they revise it, because now from 75, they get 80% or 90%, and they revise it as they get more data and information in. They get about 96 by the third revision, and that is the final revision, and that's the number that they end up going with, and that's final. That's why people don't turn in their work. Now, you might be thinking, well, why 260,000? That sounds crazy. That's ridiculous. Again, number one, who benefits? You can't name a single person who truly benefits. That's number one. But number two, what was happening during that time? Y'all forgot the Doge cuts? That did happen. The crazy tariffs that were, 100% versus China and all these other places. The tariffs that we had against Mexico and Canada, but then they were paused, and then we had all these trade deals, and you had Liberation Day. All of that stuff, those things did happen. And those were the months where those provisions did occur. There were a lot of shocks to the economy at that time. That's when the stock market was falling apart. That is when those revisions did occur. So, yeah, it would make some sense where you thought you had a job opening, but you didn't, and you probably turned in your homework late because you thought you were going to have X amount of jobs, but then you didn't. So, yeah, and that would probably make a lot of sense. I don't think there's a conspiracy around when you actually look at what month, really months plural, because it was April and May. You go back and look and say, okay, well, this actually happened in April, this actually happened in May. I can see why you thought there was going to be a job, and then once you turn in your form, you probably didn't have a job. Okay, I got you. It don't look good explaining it when they actually look into how it was calculated, but that's what happened. That is what happened. Go back and look at all the headlines that happened in April, all the headlines that happened in May, and then see how many jobs you think were actually created given all of the things that happened that led to where we are. We're in August now, so it feels like years ago, but that is what occurred during that time. But presidents don't fire the people in charge, and that's because you end up like Greece. You end up like Argentina. You might not think that can happen here, but I didn't think a lot of stuff would end up here, but here we are. And it's not a place that you want to be, especially with something as important as basic math. As basic math. I know there's a whole war against basic expertise. I get it. The experts aren't always right. I understand that. The Fed is not always right. I understand that. However, it doesn't mean they're always wrong either, especially with something as simple as this. If you want to know more about what's going on in the economy, especially what they have proposed at the FDIC, you want to check that out. You can check out that video right here.